I hate being so lonely. Men.
Head in the clouds.
Hey everybody, welcome to Head in the Clouds. Two quick things. The first, I'm from the United States of America, so if you're from a different country or a different culture, the things that I say here, they may not be the same for you. The second, I am not a licensed professional. It is so hard to find a relationship as a gay man. It's like all of these boys don't know what a man is. I guess I'll just have to settle for sex. What am I supposed to do? Here on Head in the Clouds, we talk about gay men and mental health, and today we're focusing on attachment and gay men in relationships. Before we get into that though, do me a favor. If you're a gay man, have you ever searched for love through sex? Leave that down below in the comments. So we're focusing in on attachment, particularly attachment styles and attachment trauma and how that relates to our relationships. If you grow up and your parents or your caregivers meet your needs, you wind up with a secure attachment. On the other hand, if you have some kind of attachment trauma, they neglect your needs, they abuse you, they emotionally abuse you physically, however it is, then you wind up with attachment trauma and you could have an insecure attachment. I think I like boys. Shut your mouth. So what is attachment and what is insecure attachment? Attachment is just the general way that we bond with people on an intimate level. We learn this through the way that our parents met our needs, and we carry out these patterns of insecure attachment in the way that we try to bond with future relationships, future intimate relationships. If we have an insecure attachment, we generally feel insecure with our emotions, we feel insecure about ourselves in relationships, we feel insecure about our partners, and what that really means is that we experience a lot of anxiety when we get close to people. Oh, I hate him so much, but I love that about him. When it comes to anxiety, people try to avoid anxiety or cope with anxiety in all sorts of different ways. And here on this channel, I've talked about how gay men may become dismissive or narcissistic, they may gaslight, or they may just try to avoid anxiety altogether. And that's not like an exclusive thing to gay men, but it's interesting how it shows up in gay men. And so we've talked about it here before. Whatever, I don't need a man, I'm better than that. So as I mentioned, insecure attachment, this pattern of how we relate to people in intimate relationships, it doesn't just happen when we're inside of a relationship. It also happens when we're seeking out a relationship, while we're in that dating period, looking for people that we're interested in. One way that we may try to deal with that anxiety that comes up is we may become dismissive, avoidant, and so what we do is we relate to people on very superficial levels. We don't get emotional. We may sexualize people and we focus in on their body parts and we see them as objects, and we might do the same thing to ourselves. We might look at ourselves as a work of art or something, or we work so hard on our body to try to attract people, but we don't want to get involved in the emotions of anything. In other words, we relate to people in a very sexualized way. And we probably do that because to us, that feels like the safer way to relate. I love him for his ass. I just cannot get enough. On the other hand, we may try to deal with the anxiety that comes up in a very different way. We may become anxious and preoccupied about being in a relationship and having somebody close to us. We could be seeking out somebody to give us attention all the time, feeling like they need to be tending to our needs. And that might make us a little clingy, it might make us dismissive of their needs. And because we're so desperate for attention and affection all the time, we may become demanding. The constant anxiety over needing somebody to be close and needing them to always make you feel secure may actually drive you to seek out a lot of sex, to be validated through other people through sex. In other words, we may try to use sex as a way to get people to love us. Let me see your phone. Who are you talking to?
I'm ordering food.
You're cheating on me. Something else that might happen in our attempt to manage our anxiety is we could kind of get into like a mixture of these two. We may become fearful of that anxiety and try to avoid it through all kinds of different ways. Our relationships might start to feel like a constant tug of war, where sometimes you want your partner really, really close to you, other times you want them far, far away because you need your space. It can get really, really confusing, and then you may not even know what you want anymore, and it makes relationships just feel completely impossible. You never pay attention to me. We're done. Makeup sex? So here's the thing about these insecure attachment styles. All attachment styles can be changed. In fact, we may change them within a relationship. We may change them as we move from relation to relationship because different people make us feel different ways. But we all have a general one that stems from that original relationship with our parents, and that's the one that we tend to gravitate towards. Since attachment styles can be changed, that means we can move towards the secure attachment style, which is the healthy attachment style to have a relationship in. You don't have to keep repeating these patterns in your relationship over and over that aren't effective. And the thing is, not only are these ways of trying to cope with anxiety not effective, they could also be re-traumatizing, causing you to experience that original painful trauma that you experienced as a child over and over and over again each time that you have a relationship. Trauma is really hard to work on, I know. So if you feel like you keep having these relationships over and over and over again, they're probably painful and they're probably going to continue unless you address the problem. And on the same token, if you just continually avoid relationships, avoid them, you know, you're perpetually single, you're not interested in a relationship, that's also probably not the healthiest thing. And you may want to also work on that. People within the LGBTQ+ community experience trauma in higher rates than our straight counterparts, so it's only natural that we may be experiencing some of these scary things that we experience in relationships. There are many therapists out there who are trained to deal with trauma and who will support you in moving through this. If you're not comfortable with just any old therapist, there's a lot of therapists who have been trained to work with people who are LGBTQ+. Something else that I wanted to mention here, because I'm specifically speaking about gay men, is that men in general are socialized to usually ignore how they're feeling emotionally. We don't get taught a language for emotions, and generally if we display emotions, we're taught to dismiss it, deny it, act like it's not happening. In other words, the main way that men are taught to cope with anxiety is to avoid it. That avoidance of anxiety may drive us into destructive behaviors, and those destructive behaviors could make having a relationship hard.
Is something wrong?
No, let's go out. Men in general are also socialized to see having a lot of different sexual partners as a normal and a good thing. And it's true that there's nothing really wrong with having sex, and there's nothing wrong with having a lot of sex partners if that's what you really enjoy. But it does become a problem if you're not being authentic about what it is that you really want, what it is that you're seeking through sex. And it becomes a problem if you only learn how to relate to people who you're interested in through sex. If you're not in touch with your emotions, it's not healthy.
How did the date go?
The sex was hot.
But how did you feel?
You know what? It is hard having a relationship as a gay man. As I mentioned, we experience more trauma than our straight counterparts. And the truth is, the rules of how to date and relate to other gay men have never been as clear for us as they have been for straight people. But we deserve to feel happy and secure in our relationships just as much as anyone else. I know that this is a lot, so as I mentioned, if it's something that you have difficulty with, I really urge you to go in to see a therapist. But if you're just wanting to think a little bit more about some things, I have some free worksheets over on my Patreon page on self-esteem. Those might be of interest to you. Patreon is a place where I can support people doing the work that they love, and my patrons help to support me in my mission of humanizing mental health. Thank you as always to my patrons. If you want to learn more about gay men and mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty. Subscribe. And don't forget to comment down below if you've ever sought love through sex. Thank you for joining me, everybody, here on Head in the Clouds. Hey, I appreciate you.